the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by First Star Logistics. We're live from the First Star Logistics studio. And on this segment, we'll be discussing if Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert is overrated. Now, I'll start with my take. I think Justin Herbert is slightly a bit overrated. That doesn't mean he isn't good. That doesn't mean he's in some of the upper echelon quarterbacks, but I definitely think the guy has a little bit of an overratedness to him. You figure in the Jacksonville Jaguars game when they needed him to step up, he got outplayed by Trevor Lawrence, allowing Trevor Lawrence to come back and pretty much shock the entire world, set the NFL world ablaze, and Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars upset the Chargers. Now, one could make the case that the many different offense coordinators that Justin Herbert has had in his career has sort of hindered him, and I can certainly see an argument for that. But when I look at it time and time again, when the big moment is there, Justin Herbert seems to shrink a little bit, and maybe Brandon Staley, his head coach, and him share some of the blame, right? But for a guy that we talk about in MVP type of conversations and a guy with the amount of receivers that he has and the talent that he has on the offensive side of the ball, you just expect more. I think Justin Herbert leaves a lot to be desired. I'm really, really curious to hear what Daniel and what Evan have to say. So, Daniel, I'll let you start this one off.
So, Malik, I like this conversation. I actually do, right? Whether I believe it or not, I think it's a very valuable conversation to have. What I'm going to say is last year, we can point to, many different instances where the Chiefs game, whether it was the Jaguars game earlier in the year where they got completely blown out. I think he is overrated as a quarterback, but what I'm going to say is I think this year is going to mask a lot of his issues. I think this year is going to mask a lot of his flaws, right? You got two wide receivers that can arguably mask some of his flaws, right? You got Mike Williams, you got Quentin Johnson. Both guys are 50-50 ball guys 6'4" receivers. You got Keenan Allen, you got Austin Ekeler out of the backfield, and you got, dare I say, a top 10 offensive line with a top 10 offensive coordinator coming in. I think that's going to mask a lot of his issues. Not to mention, I think their defense is going to take a huge step forward. So this year's going to, kind of give a glimpse, a false sense of reality for Justin Herbert. I think they have a great year, but I do think, like you said, his issues, regardless of the talent they have around him, I think they will arise in the playoffs. And the issues, I mean, late game, tries to do too much, tries to be superhero, and I think he's going to get his team into a lot of trouble.
So you kind of like, I don't know, kind of made an interesting point there. You said his issues are going to be masked this year, but then you said his issues could, he could get his team into a lot of trouble this year. So again,
Yeah.
I'm throwing you kind of into the fire here, but I'm just a little confused because for me, in order to talk about his issues, in order to talk about masking of his issues, we have to talk about his issues.
Yeah.
For me, Justin Herbert's issues rely on the mundane task, right? The checking the ball down. He seems to struggle with the checking the ball down, the middle of the field. It seems like for them, it's really, stretching the field. And I get that. This is the league that we're in nowadays. But I would personally like to see Justin Herbert, number one, get his legs involved a little bit, just a tad bit more, because he has that ability. He has the exact same ability we see Josh Allen has. Justin Herbert has that exact same ability. And I think it's all about sort of who you match up with as a play call. Like if you put Justin Herbert in the New York Football Giants system with Brian Dable, I think you see ridiculous numbers from him, right? I think if you put him with the Bills situation, even with Ken Dorsey, even though I know a lot of Bills fans don't like Ken Dorsey, I think you see the numbers advance. I think you see the numbers go up. So I'm not trying to, put you on the spot here, but when I look at it, I really think that Justin Herbert I think that it's very hard to mask his issues because of his play style, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the point I guess I'm making is over the course of 17 games,
Yeah.
I think his stats, I think it's going to look beautiful. When you look at his entire year, you got Kellen Moore, who made Dak Prescott look like a top 10 quarterback, made Dak Prescott's numbers look amazing. But when you look at Dak Prescott, you can say, all right, there's certain instances, whether it's a playoff game, whether it's late game, where Dak Prescott struggles. I think we're going to see the numbers look great. I think Justin Herbert's going to have a career year because of the receivers he has, because of the talent he has. But when it comes down to it, I think his issues are going to rise when you look at it critical late game in the playoffs, prime time. I think that's where it's going to arise. I think over the grand scheme of things, his numbers will look great. 17 games will look beautiful, but I just don't think that his, issues will be masked come playoff time.
Evan, what are your thoughts on it?
So I think a lot of it depends where we're ranking Justin Herbert, right? Because obviously, if you're saying that he's that elite tier, which generally I refer to as the top 3 to 5 at your position, depending on what position we're talking about, right? So obviously, that's Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Um, there's a number of guys you can make an argument there for that area, but
You said Aaron Rodgers? Is that what you just said?
yeah, absolutely. There's that tier kind of right there in that like 5 to 7, 8 area where you've got Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. And I think Justin Herbert is like right there at that argument for anywhere between that 4 and 7 spot kind of area. Even though I get the argument that he maybe isn't quite top 5, but he's right on that cusp. I feel like that's about right for him, though I think there's credence to what you've said, right? The down to down consistency is what has really been lacking for him. And game to game, even. We've seen the high end look as good as anybody, but also there are still some of those head scratching plays.
Mhm.
But to his credit, the guys in that Jacksonville game that they lost and blew, their leading receiver is Gerald Everett.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen was coming back off an injury. DeAndre Carter is playing career high snaps.
sure.
I mean, you've got Trey McKitty out there taking receptions for you. Josh Kelly, Josh Palmer, like that's
Yeah, no,
that's
for
not
sure.
a good cast. And
No.
on top of that, you mentioned OC, not great. His average depth of the target ranked 29th out of 31 qualifying quarterbacks.
Mhm.
You've got a howitzer for an arm,
Right.
Justin Herbert, and you're aiming down, you're aiming right in front of you. Where,
Yeah.
to your credit, he did not perform well. He
Right.
had a 79.1 PFF grade, which in the short area you would expect more from him.
Much higher, yeah, for sure.
Right. So I'm not trying to make excuses per se, but we know he has the talent. I agree. The consistency and the performance in the key moments has not been there, but this is still a guy who last season, despite being injured with his rib injury most of the season, as well as having downgraded weapons, he was first in turnover worthy play rate among those 31 qualifying quarterbacks. He took care of the ball. And he was fifth in pressure to sack rate last season. So despite losing Rashawn Slater,
Mhm.
his elite left tackle, and not having him, despite getting pressured constantly, he was one of the best at avoiding sacks, which is really important for quarterbacks. So just to give credence to why he deserves to be in that range of, on the cusp of elite, that 5 to 8 range, that Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts range, Lamar Jackson range. I think he has the argument to be in there, but like you said, there's going to have to be sustained success and playoff success before he can really vault himself into that elite tier, in my opinion.
So I'm happy with that we're having this conversation, honestly, about Justin Herbert. And I think part of it for me is I'm going to specifically talk right now to Chargers fans. And you guys might hate what I'm going to say, but I'm going to speak the truth. Now, I'm not going to go as far as Emmanuel Acho and call him a social media quarterback because I think that's crazy. Although I understand the point he was trying to make or attempting to make. I'll say this. There's no reason in hell that this Chargers team, that your offense shouldn't be able to compete with teams like the Kansas City Chiefs or at least challenge for that division. There's no way in hell. And if that's not happening, you guys should be pissed. You guys should be calling for Brandon Staley's head on a stick because Justin Herbert has all the talent in the world, and he's always had all the talent in the world to compete, to contend in this division and be a main staple and actually challenge Patrick Mahomes. I think outside of Patrick Mahomes, he's second best quarterback in the division, unless I'm forgetting somebody. I think that am I forgetting somebody, right? No. So Justin Herbert, yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing at one point in time for Chargers fans to always argue the Burrow, who's better, Burrow or Herbert, but that shouldn't matter. What you should be asking yourselves, Chargers fans, Bolts Nation, you should be saying is, can our quarterback, Justin Herbert, finally show up in the big moment? Can our quarterback, Justin Herbert, take us over the hump? Can we actually challenge the Kansas City Chiefs for the division this year? Can we not throw an interception on the goal line to a rookie? Yeah, remember that? Interception on the goal line to the rookie in a primetime game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Can we not do that? Especially when you literally stare down a receiver, you knew where you were going the entire time. I understand Gerald Everett, that's who he was open, and he had literally led you down the field that entire drive. But those boneheaded mistakes are mistakes that you can't afford to make, especially when you have a quarterback that is supposed to be of the elite, of the upper echelon. There's a problem that I have with Justin Herbert, though, and it speaks to a bigger issue that we haven't talked about yet. To me, it's feeling very, very similar to his career at Oregon. Feeling very, very similar to his career at Oregon. A lot of expectations, a lot left to be desired. That's what it's starting to feel like for me. Justin Herbert, if people don't remember, was supposed to be this best quarterback in this draft class, in his respective draft class. He was supposed to be the guy that you wanted to see the next step from. And there's a game that I remember, and I know I hate that we're going back to college football right now because he's been in the league for a couple of years now, and he's
Washington.
about to be up for a contract extension. No, it was not the Washington game, although that game was absolutely downright dreadful for him. It was a game against ASU against Jaden Daniels, and Justin Herbert shrunk. And I said right then and there people are saying, you know what, this is a guy that, he's used to winning. He's not a loser. But it also made me question some things. And the same questions I had about Trevor Lawrence is questions that I had about Justin Herbert. If all you know is winning, what's going to happen when you go to the NFL? Because typically speaking, when you go to the NFL and a team drafts you, you're one of the top picks, you're going to a bad team. And when you're going to that bad team, you got to wonder from the mental makeup, how will this quarterback be able to lead this team out of the depths of poverty? See, we knew we were getting with Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow came from LSU. LSU was sucking. Or maybe not sucking, but they were struggling.
Yeah.
And I remember the years with Alabama, Joe Burrow's first year at Alabama, he struggled. Next year he comes back, lights the entire college football world on fire. Has one of the greatest college football seasons from a quarterback we've ever seen. So I've seen that guy take a program that was struggling and bring it back. I haven't seen that. I didn't see that in Justin Herbert's career. All we have to point to is that Rose Bowl where everybody's like, oh, he played so great. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. When Trevor Lawrence struggled, it always seemed like things just crumbled. And we saw that time and time again. Now, Trevor seems like he's on the uptick, but he also has a Super Bowl winning coach in Doug Marrone. I seriously wonder, does Trevor Lawrence, does Justin Herbert, because he's with Brandon Staley, does that hold him back a little bit more? But so when I talk about him, this being reminiscent of his career at Oregon, it's starting to be, because the expectations are really, really high for Justin Herbert, yet and still there seems to be a lot left on the table. There seems to be a lot left to be desired. And we're sitting here scratching our head saying, this will be the year. Nope. This will be the year. Nope. This will be the year. And yeah, I just struggle. I struggle to see him shaking that. I think he will always be in the echelon of very good, but not good enough. And
Yeah.
I feel for Chargers fans because the last quarterback they had was the exact same way in Phillip Rivers. He was good, very good, but not good enough. So the point that I was making about the draft slot was Justin Herbert's situation was a little bit different. He wasn't going to a team that was horrible. He went to a team that had weapons. He did. He went to a team that the Chargers weren't the Bengals, is my point that I'm getting at. They weren't. He went to a team with weapons that had a number 1 wide receiver, that had a number 2 wide receiver. Now, they had to fix things, of course, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but they've made those strides. You would have ideally liked to see that offense take the strides and Justin Herbert take the strides with the team taking those strides, and we have yet to see that. And I think someone needs to talk about it. I think the jury, for me, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to give the guy another chance. I'm going to give the guy another shot. But for me, I think that he's borderline what he was at Oregon. He's better, obviously, as a quarterback, but I'm saying he's becoming, it's following that same trajectory, that same Phillip Rivers trajectory. Very, very good. Very good seasons, very talented team. What's that one team, Ev, that Phillip Rivers had around him? LaDainian Tomlinson. Remember that one year it was like 05?
Antonio Gates.
Yeah. Like, Chargers fans have been through a lot.
Yep.
And I just look at it, and I know I've been long-winded here, but I just really think that at some point, you've got to break through. At some point, the quarterback's got to show up, especially if you draft him as high as you did.
I want to give him a year or two, man. I just to be fair to him as the offensive coordinator, because we know how difficult it can be when you're trying to be that square peg, round hole when the coach is just such a clear mismatch for you, right? The thing about coaching, when you talk about guys like Lou Anarumo, what takes them to the next level? What makes them one of the best coordinators in the NFL? And that's being able to accentuate the talents and the strengths of your players and to be able to adapt your scheme to amplify those talents and make it give the best yield for you on the field. And that clearly was not the case with Joe Lombardi, where he was constantly misusing Justin Herbert and just not taking advantage of the tools and the monster that you have in him with all of his physical tools. So I definitely want to give him a year or two, see what that kind of comes back around at.
But do we think he has a year or two? Like I'm like hear me out.
I think
like,
he has a year. I think he has a
Sam
year.
Darnold still has a year.
I
or
get
two,
it, but
so I think
yes,
Justin
but a different
Herbert's
organization.
just fine.
No, I don't think Justin Herbert. Listen, Justin Herbert is their quarterback, right? But my fear is if you tell somebody there's something, they won't believe you. They won't believe you the first time. But if you keep telling somebody there's something, and the stats back it up, they might start to believe that. Especially time and time again. If someone tells you, or you just read online, or people say, he's good, he's just not good enough. He can't take the team over the top. At some point, their opinions of you become your reality, is what I'm getting at. We've seen quarterbacks have all the talent in the world. Cam Newton, let's talk about Cam for a second. Former league MVP. Cam Newton was a great quarterback in the league when he was in his prime, but he just couldn't get over the hump. That one year he did take him to the Super Bowl, they lost, yada, yada, yada. I can't help but think Cam was reading what people were saying about him. I mean, he talked about it on the podcast and stuff like that. Cam was reading what people were saying about him. So eventually, at some point, that became his reality. So my point with Justin Herbert is there was a lot of talk about how he's not a vocal leader. There was a lot of talk about how he's overrated. There's a lot of talk now about how he can't get him over the hump. At some point, right? We're talking about year 5? Year 4?
This will probably be year 4.
Year 4?
At
some point, what's like, when do we say when? When is it, Herbert? When does it say Herbert is when do we say Herbert, is just in the class of very good quarterback, but can't take the team over the hump?
Yeah. What I'll say, I think this, not to give him an excuse, I think this is the year. Year 4, a lot of change.
Yes.
New offense coordinator.
But I don't think Kellen, and I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm just being honest right here. And I like, we all have our thoughts. I don't think Kellen Moore is this guy that everybody thinks he is.
He doesn't have to be. He has to be okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think that the stat that you said, the average depth of target, if they utilize Justin Herbert this year, have him throw the ball downfield, have him utilize his weapons, I think this is where we're going to see it. If he doesn't, it's on him. If the same average depth of target is the short term, then maybe it shows. Maybe he's just a guy that he'll either throw it deep or he'll check it down.
How about this? How about you take a MO page out of the Bills book? Listen, the Bills offense is not that complicated at all. It's very basic, if I'm being honest with you. You send a guy deep, you have your tight end work the seam, right? The Bills don't have a running game that's consistent enough, but you have your running back in the backfield. Maybe you get a little read option going or whatever the case may be. But pretty much what I'm saying is you spread these receivers out and you let your quarterback play ball. If a play breaks down, you let him run with the ball. Like that. That's really what it is. Like Justin Herbert is a very similar quarterback to Josh Allen. And I'm not just saying that because they're white, they're tall, and they're fast. I'm saying that because they really are they're very similar quarterbacks. Yeah. The exact same capability that Justin Herbert had, Josh Allen has, Justin Herbert has. To be quite honest, he does. It's just about letting that dog off the leash, if you will. If this team is going to take the next step, it's going to require Justin Herbert using his legs. These things are going to need to happen. And
he has to utilize his targets too. He has to utilize what they have. Big body receivers, use that. Justin Herbert, actually use that. Don't give, Quentin Johnson a 5-yard slant. Throw the deep ball. Use your arm. So I agree. He's got everything at his disposal this year. There's no excuse.
I mean, there was a lot of overthrowing wide receivers too. I mean, to his point, like it was, and I get it. He's got a big arm, but like, when I look at this Chargers team, there's no reason why they can't compete with the Kansas City Chiefs.
There's no reason why they can't be the best team in football.
It's true.
So,
again, I think maybe I'm being a little too hard on Justin Herbert. Maybe I am, but at the same time, I think that what the expectations are as high as they are, you need him to show up. Ev, you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just definitely want to see that shift. I just think when you have that guy being first in turnover worthy play rate, being able to take care of that ball, being able to accentuate the big time throws, the deep ball, as well as the crucial down plays, right? giving you more opportunity to have better looks at those and better scheme. I really think you're going to mix the good, like the ability to avoid sacks and avoid turnover-worthy plays, pairing that with more of the downfield shots that he was missing. And I really think that's going to help him, like Daniel say, have a really good year. Now, to his point, maybe that kind of colors the picture a little bit and buys him another couple years of, is he, which side of the fence does he land? But I think it's too early to write him off, especially with all the shifting change you've had, the misuse, the injuries to wide receiver, left tackle himself. I mean, that's. I know it sounds like excuses, but I mean, when you look at all these things together, it definitely adds up.
For sure, 100%. I just judge him on the same metric. Again, I'm almost no holds barred. I judge him on the same exact metric they judge other quarterbacks on, and they let in.
And like he said, it's not us being hard. We're judging him as if he's top 3 quarterback. And I think that's as simple as it is. If you're a top 3 quarterback, you're going to show up. Right. This year, you're going to show up. Whether your receiver goes out, whether it's new offense coordinator, if you're a top 3 quarterback, then it'll show up. So we'll see. We'll see.
I'll put it to you this way, guys. The amount of respect that I have for Justin Herbert should be heard in my tone and what I'm saying. I'll put it to you this way. Justin Herbert is what I consider a dual threat quarterback. He can run the ball. He can pass the ball. And we've seen him run the ball effectively. We've seen him use his legs and make him work for him. Justin Herbert had 0 rushing touchdowns last year. Let me say that again. Justin Herbert had 0 rushing touchdowns last year. For the ability that guy possesses, that's unacceptable. Use your legs, make it work for you. When a play breaks down, there's no reason why you can't get involved in making something happen. Again, we're judging you as if you're one of the top upper echelon quarterbacks. Show up. If you guys like more segments like this and you like more video content like this, make sure you guys do us a huge favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload a video.